With your help, they'll find it. Cure Alzheimer's Fund supports critical research into the causes of Alzheimer's disease. We give 100% of donations directly to them, because research is the only path to a cure. Visit curealz.org to learn more and be part of the discovery.
Here we are, Sam. Home for the Honda days.
So, this is the all-wheel drive CRV.
Yeah. Also, hi, your son is here.
The tail lights.
Sharp. Okay, I'll be inside.
Oh, look, it's got the power tailgate and everything. Just like in the real.
Bring home the most amazing deals of the year during Happy Honda Days. Because around here, we Honda. Nice to see you guys.
The future feels good.
One is enough for me.
Protests forced Idaho health officials to halt their weekly board meeting last night. Why? Because dozens of anti-mask and now anti-vax demonstrators gathered outside the Central District Health Headquarters in Boise. Some even rallied outside board members' homes. The Ada County Commissioner says some protesters were banging on the door while her 12-year-old son was home alone. Imagine that.
I can't, that is unacceptable. Donny O'Sullivan is with us now. We're seeing the danger of disinformation across social media play out in real time here.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is prime time for anti-vaccine conspiracy theorists. And I think the real worrying thing here, Poppy and Jim, is that, you know, when people are searching for information about these new vaccines, people who might have some genuine questions, genuine concerns, there's a real risk that they get pulled down these really dark rabbit holes on social media that are just full of misinformation. And to give you an example of the depravity of what's out there, I want to show you this statement from Facebook about what they're going to do about these false claims. They said false claims about the safety, ingredients, or side effects of the vaccines. For example, we will remove false claims that COVID-19. Okay.
Morning, Kathy. Morning, Kathy.
Morning, Bob.
I'm going to click those. I'm going to click those buttons, and I'm going to give you make co-host.
Okay.
And so what we do here is this is not going to be a lot of slide turning. It's, you know, it's discussion, and if you could keep an eye on in the chat, because when, you know, the best way to do it. By the way, I hear that squeaking. I hear that squeaking noise, Kathy.
You do? I don't hear anything. Yeah.
Okay. Now it stopped. Now I got it. Okay. Let's just see. We'll live with it. And so the idea here is, Kathy, that what I want to collect, and so that it doesn't get we don't have a lot of talking over in background, is what I'm going to suggest is that when we go to the slide, which is right here. And Kathy, can you see the slide? Is this big enough to use in this mode?
No, I can't see them at all, Bob. You need to share your screen, I guess.
Well, okay, that's the first part. All right. So can you see?
Okay, I can see it now.
Is it big enough to use during the presentation?
Well, you have to hit the presenter button.
No, I understand, but if I hit the presenter button, if I hit present button, what happens is if I go to present button, what happens is I get a full screen like this. Okay, that works. And I'm still here. Okay.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
All right. me just take a look here. Yeah, what I'm gonna do is just introduce it and then start off with this. Tell me about deals you fell apart, and we'll spend most of the time collecting information. I will take notes as well. But the
Okay.
idea is to see which ones are the reasons, the major reasons. And
You
then
bet.
we'll go into here, and it's gonna be, one by one, but I'm not gonna read through this. I'm not gonna be reading through, here's the issue, here's the solution, here's this. We're gonna just discuss. And I'm gonna let people know that, so how many, if I just count up how many of these, and by the way, can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
3, 6, 7, 10, 12, 16, 18. We have, what we've included in these slides are 20 examples from our experience of deals that have, that we've ran into trouble, and very, very few of them, only a couple actually fell through, and most of them we had to scramble to get them resolved.
Right.
And so if you would take the notes, and I think between the two of us, we'll get it. So let's go back here for a minute here. Okay. Kathy, any questions, any thoughts?
No, I think we have a lot of good information to share.
Yep.
And hopefully there'll be enough attendees that will benefit from it.
The number of attendees is nice, but it's not the value
Right.
of this. Hang on, and that's wants to call. No. Just gotta let her know. Till 11 a.m. Okay. The value is that I think the real value of this webinar is a conscious reflection on keeping deals together, and putting, embedding this into our process going forward. And
Right.
the value of the more people we have, the more feedback, or the more input we'll have about issues that they have had. But boy, I think, yeah, I think the real, that's the value. So let's just see what happens. Let's come out of it, and we will plan on repeating this. And I think we'll repeat it, or we'll have more information coming out of here. Okay.
Right.
I'm just getting my, making sure that my phone is on mute. Okay. Yeah, okay. All right. So let's just see here. Oops. Good morning.
Hello. Hi, Kathy.
Hey, Louise.
How are you?
Hello, Louise.
I can see you from the eyes up.
Yeah, Kathy. Yeah. Yeah, I put mine on a book so they can see more of it. So you can see my tie. I'm back to wearing my ties. I miss wearing my bow ties.
Well, that's
because I'm always here. Although I have my shirt and tie on, and I have my pajamas still on. So, well, you think I'm telling you I have my pajamas on, but who knows? Okay.
well,
Louise,
like
you have a new hairdo. Louise,
Hello.
Hi, you have a new do.
I have a new
Since
do.
I've
Oh
seen you.
yes, I cut my hair.
It looks very nice. Since
Thank
I saw
you.
you last. You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
So it's funny, you're coming in on your, that must be your cell phone. Your video is on
Yes,
Zoom and your audio is coming through your cell phone.
yep.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
So what's the good news? And I know what the good news is from my folks. What's the good news with you, Louise?
I'm doing okay. I can't wait to see the new office. I'm planning on getting down there. I can't drive yet. I broke my foot, so it's been just over a month, actually. And but it allows me to get a lot done at home. So I have my schedule all set, and I'm making those difficult calls. And yeah.
How are those difficult calls going?
They're scary, but it's good. It's good. I'm getting through it.
Yep. Just when you think of it, if you think of it as what you can do for others, it becomes easier and easier.
I
And
like
they
that.
feel it, and they can feel, and they can feel the difficulty. That's what's interesting is, people read it. Okay. So
My
looks
house
like-
is full of gifts right now because I'm doing I'm helping out a charity, and I'm on the drop-off site. So I'm expecting 91 gifts.
Ah,
Wow.
what's the charity?
It's called Everyone Loves Families, ELF. It's Operation ELF. And they have a couple of different organizations, like the Boys and Girls Club, that know the children that are in need.
Yep.
And they ask them for specifics, and then people volunteer to buy those things. So
Good.
How nice.
it is. It's like Christmas in my house. I mean, there's just toys everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. And so will people pick them up at your house? Is that the way?
So the specific charity is coming to my house to pick up the gifts for their children. There's 91 of them in that particular center.
Good.
So yes, so they drop off, people from everywhere just drop off the gifts here, and then the charity comes and picks them all up. I have codes,
Yeah.
And I'll put them in a bag, a grocery bag or a lawn and leaf bag with the code.
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah.
make it easy there.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, the people right up the street from me are foster parents, and they collected gifts for foster children, specifically teenagers, that are so difficult to buy for, and they made specific requests.
Mhm.
And I donated and had Amazon delivered to their home, but every time I look out my front door, there's 20 boxes in front of their house.
Right.
So people have been very good about participating.
Yeah, it's very, very generous. People are very generous.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed.
So interesting, Lindsay, when she sets these up, she said around the holiday, they find that participation is, drops off. So this is a real drop off. That's okay. What I was, when we prepared it, one of the things that became obvious to me when I offered to do this, to do the session, it was a great opportunity to do a lessons learned. I mean, when we close on a deal, we try to do a lessons learned to see what happened, and it's difficult to get that always in, but this is a great opportunity to look way back. I mean, you know, Cassie, who's doing this with me, you know, I think sees more of the action and more of the issues because she's constantly up against, you know, everybody involved in the transaction. And we said, let's go back and look at everything that we have. What have we learned? Where have been our major issues? And we've collected them. And actually, that's what we've assembled. And the idea of this is, and Kathy and I were talking about yesterday. We say we have a process for doing, you know, for transaction management for everything from when you first meet a buyer and when you first go on a listing appointment. And we got a process, and it's got 100 and something things to do, which is overwhelming. All important to do. However, what we thought of yesterday is, why don't we take the learnings from this? Because what we're going to talk about is not everything needs to be done. What are the things that if you don't do well or don't do at all can kill a deal? And so the objective is we can now take our transaction management process and there all these steps, and I'll share just a view of our checklist. Is we can identify the specific steps in the process that we find are the most troublesome. So that, you know, there's the 80-20 rule. You know, Keller says, focus on your 20. And these are the things you can't miss. So if we put in the learnings and it all comes down to something that we should have done and we didn't, or in some cases it may be some things in our process that are not in there, that we've missed it, that's really worthwhile. And so what we'll do is identify it. And what I can see here is I could see as a, what do you call this? Not an icon, so when you get to that step, all of a sudden you get this thing, this burst out there that says, don't forget it. Don't forget this. Hey, Kathy, I'm just wondering, Kathy, I hear the scratching, and does anybody else hear the scratching that I hear? Yes. So Kathy, that's coming, I think, from you. Can you find a way, maybe mute, I know it's a problem, but mute yourself just for a minute because this will be distracting. I wanted to see if we can troubleshoot the source of it. Yeah. That's it. So it's going to be a little problematic for you, Kathy. I'll tell you what, Kathy, as we get into it, you can at any point just unmute yourself. This is a conversation. And as it comes to a point where you got something to add or I need your help, just ask. And now that I see Ginny, Ginny is in the other room. She's on the call and I can hear her speaker. Ginny? I can hear your speaker. Can you either go upstairs or in the other room? It's because I'm getting feedback of myself. I can.
If she turns down, if she turns her computer volume down, you won't hear it.
Turn you. All right.
How's that?
How's that? That's good. Okay.
Thank you.
So tell you what we're going to do here. We've got an hour and there's a lot we can share, but the idea is that, in fact, I've asked Kathy or Suzanne to put into the chat a link to the slides here. And so that it.
Yeah, at the end of the presentation, I can actually share the file. So towards the end, I will do that.
Okay. Yep. All right. And so that everybody will have the benefit, and because the idea of this is not I think this hour is not reading slides and writing down, here's the problem, here's the solution. It's really, what's more important is to understand the importance of bulletproofing the transaction and we will make available, the how-to later on. So that's what we want to do. But what I thought I'd do, so let's just kind of tick forward. Just to the side, let's get into it. If people come, they'll catch up. So question is, why bulletproof a transaction? I know it's a term, I think I don't know who coined it way back, but we've used it on an ongoing basis because in our experience is that, so number one, the sale or the purchase of a property is probably, for most people, the single largest one is financial move or life move or largest stressor in their life, one of the largest. And the statistic on that is buying and selling a property is up there, is among the top 5 stressors, and it's right up there with death and divorce. So this is extremely important for the client. And our role is one of making it smooth, making it so that then they don't get stressed or the stress is minimal. And the way to do it is not have glitches. The second part is on the agent side. Boy, it's hardly generating, Louise, and converting to appointments. But once you get a client, once you get a listing, once you get a buyer, pretty easy to get something under agreement. I mean, you have issues going on with multiple offers, but boy, there's strategies for all of that. But in the end, it's pretty easy to get a property under agreement. What's extremely difficult is to keep that deal together through closing. And the further along you get in the process, the more invested the buyer, the seller is, and you, the agent. So that think about Louise, you get a deal and you're down to mortgage commitment, you're down to clear to close, and the deal is in jeopardy. That's huge for you. It's huge for anybody. It's huge for us. And we do everything possible to avoid that because of the loss. We've assumed we were going to close, but it happens. With us, it is rare. It is a low percentage of deals that actually do not close, that were under agreement. But there are a substantial number of deals that we've got to jump through hoops. And I personally, or I take it personally, that when we get further down into the process, it doesn't matter from the beginning, but especially we get further down, I do anything, everything. It doesn't matter what it costs, what it takes. I will do anything I can. I will do that we preserve the deal so that our client, both clients, get what they're looking for. I just and I go to an extreme, and I say, I do it, and guess what? You say, boy, was it worth putting in that time, Bob? The answer is, if I looked at the return on the investment, you could say I'm making $5. I'm making 5 cents an hour on this deal, but it's not about the money. Ginny says, yes, it's not about the money at that point. It's about, preserving it. It's about meeting the needs, because in the end, it pays forward. Really, I just can't express how big a deal this one is. At least that's it. And so that's why this topic of bulletproofing a transaction, thought it would be worth sharing. So here's what I'd like to take a minute. And by the way, Suzanne, Ginny hasn't participated in, in the creation of this, but Ginny's around, and you may have some of them that, we've done, but you, Louise, and, you've all been consumers. So Louise, tell me, for deals you've worked on, first, have you ever had a deal fall apart and not close after it's under agreement? Yeah.
No,
Get
I
yourself-
haven't.
No, you haven't. Okay. Have you had any deals that were so close to falling apart that the amount of effort you had to put in was to an extreme?
Yes.
And what were those? What were the situations? I mean, we've captured hours, and I'm not going to share theory. I'm going to share real practice. What were the situations? What were the top reasons? What are the top reasons that your deals, in your case, were problematic, that could have fallen apart? What were the top issues that you find?
This particular one was the smokes.
Okay.
The listing agent hadn't scheduled the smoke inspection, and I just happened to call and ask her if it was completed because I didn't get any notification on it. And she hadn't called yet. Well, it's not that that would have caused it to fall through, but it would have caused it to be delayed. And I didn't want that to happen either.
Well, it's not just more delayed. It wouldn't have closed. I mean,
Right.
in theory, we didn't pick, by the way, that's one that we have seen. In fact, Kathy has a story about that. Kathy, yeah, Kathy, tell your story about the smoke inspection. She knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yes. We had a listing, and I was relatively new to the Gill group. However, I forgot to schedule the smoke inspection. It just completely slipped my mind. And when it was time to go through the checklist and confirm that everything was ready, I remembered I hadn't scheduled the smoke inspection. So I called the fire department and pleaded for their help. And the lieutenant said to me, "Why are you calling me last minute?" And I fell on the sword, told him the truth, and said, "I dropped the ball. I forgot. It was my responsibility, and I forgot." And he agreed to help and went out the next day, and we got it done. I've never forgotten ever since, and I never will again. And the lieutenant told Bob that the only reason he agreed to come out was because I was honest with him and told the truth, that I dropped the ball. And it was such a stressful 24 hours. I never want to go through that again.
Yeah.
So
Louise, what was your, and so you checked it, but you found it, and so you just alerted them, and they scheduled it, and they scheduled it, and they did it.
I called the inspector. I called the fire department myself and said, "Please, can you make sure that you do this by, the walkthrough on the day of the very last day."
Yep.
So, they scheduled it.
So what could have happened if they didn't schedule it? And I always want to drill down on something because that makes it real. So and I've had cases where they just said we can't do it, and they don't bend. They don't have someone like Kathy who falls on the sword. What would be the outcome? What would happen if you got to closing and they did not do the smoke wasn't there? It's required that an original of the smoke is there. What would have been the consequence? What would have happened?
They'd have to postpone the closing.
Yep. Right. And no big deal. Why would it? How could it become a big deal? Why would that? When would that be a big deal?
Well, let's just say that the rate lock was going to expire or something to that effect.
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
mean, there's so many people involved at that point, the attorneys and the closing, the banks and.
What's the biggest, think about it. What's the biggest issue? Think about what's going on. What is the biggest issue that will stress out?
Moving.
You got it. A moving is scheduled. And what do you do about that? Now, we can get into, talking, there's lots of ways around it, a use and occupancy, et cetera. In fact, just this past Friday, for a different reason, we could not go to record. It was for a total different reason, could not go to record. Well, it was because the funds, they closed, and the funds cleared late in the day, on the day of closing. And the registry closed and they couldn't go to record. Now, and this was on a Friday, 5 o'clock. They said, you have to wait till Monday. The buyer already had movers set up for Sunday. Moving truck, it's all set up, pleated. We had already asked, we've already moved the closing date once to accommodate the buyer. And the reason why we moved the closing date is we asked the seller, through the agent, is that the seller needs to move in, would like to move in on an earlier date. Could we keep the closing date and get a use and occupancy, which is just allowing them, it's a legal document, taking liability away from the seller to move in. And the seller said no.
Oh.
So we already had some data. The seller said no. And so we moved the closing date, everything. Now we got into this issue. And truth be known, the closing happened at 9 o'clock in the morning. The buyer, and part of it was the buyer didn't have the amount of money because the attorney didn't tell him exact until the closing, at the closing table. So they said, just go to the bank and wire the funds and we'll be all set for the end of the day. Buyer had a couple meetings and she didn't do the wire. She had other things going on. And she said, so I'll do it later. By the time she got around to it, it was afternoon and we missed the date. So that was our client. I mean, this client, great woman and all, but there's some learning there. That should have never happened. I mean, you say to yourself, this should be easy, but it happened. And that's a real example. And so it's her responsibility, but it comes down to us, because in the end, so it did not close. And so this is a job that we need to be on top of it to know. I've never thought of even getting at this level of detail because it's pretty simple, but guess what? It happens. So one of the things on the checklist at the closing table, did it close? Did the funds get wired? And we usually just wait till it happens and assume, but in this case here, it didn't happen. And so that's an opportunity. It happened. What happened? And so let's get back. And so here's the outcome. What happened? So the attorney called me. I'm taking the time to go through this because this is what's rich about it. It first is about it happened and what do you do? The attorney called me and said, Bob, what do you want to do? I said, usually you're the attorney. What do you think? She said, well, I'm not sure whether I ought to call the attorney or you ought to call the listing agent. I said to her, it's a little tricky. I said, because we've already been through this once and the listing agent has refused us in the past. So why would they accept it now? I said, but in the end, I said, it's my responsibility, as the agent, and it's more likely that I can negotiate it than she. So I sent a text, given a heads up, no big deal. They're moving Sunday. Can they do it? And she came back with, okay, we'd like to get a use of occupancy. The use and occupancy was created by the buyer's attorney. It was signed by the buyer. It was signed by the counsel because they have what's the word? They have power of attorney signed by the seller's counsel. Wow, we're all set. Suddenly get a text back a little bit later saying, talk to the seller, change their mind, doesn't want to do it, not allowing it. so this is real. So what do I do? So I decided, I just simply, I didn't try to renegotiate. I said, gee, the seller, I said, they've already got a use and occupancy. They already got a use and occupancy signed by the attorney. I said nothing. I heard nothing back. Could have happened, you know, it could have blew up, but it didn't. She said, don't give him the keys. So she already said that. I just decided to kind of close my eyes and say, I've communicated it and let it happen. It turns out that they moved in on Sunday. Everything okay. Wired on Monday. Nobody had any questions. But just think about the amount of energy consumed, some stress, but everything consumed because the buyer decided they had two appointments, important appointments, but was it as important as closing on your house?
Right.
Case in point. So very similar. Anything else? Because that's a good one. Anything else you can think of, Louise, that has happened? What's the next biggest thing? I mean, that's way down the end, but
Smokes his way down the end. What do you
yeah, I
mean?
mean, that's at the end. That's but where
Something
anything
with, maybe
what's the most disastrous?
well, let's just say the final walkthrough, things are messed up. I don't know, maybe who knows, something they took the refrigerator and it was supposed to stay. I don't know.
No, they do. By the way, the refrigerator is not an appliance. And unless it was specified in the offer and in the P&S that all appliances, including A, B, C, D, E, and refrigerator, doesn't have to stay. We've had that. And by the way, one of our examples, you see, is the final walkthrough. And so let me give you the scenario. Same deal as with this woman. We went in and did the final walkthrough. Kathy, was the night before, right? Did the final walkthrough. Everything should be okay. It's a condo in Brighton and cleaned up. All they could do is that they get out of there and take care of everything. So I did the walkthrough with the buyer. There was no items on a repair checklist. It was just the basic things. But we found a couple of things. And so let me give you the specifics because this should not have happened. It didn't have to happen. Number one, we were supposed to go in there and make sure the keys were there, right? That's the whole idea, leave the keys. The keys were not in the unit when we had scheduled and done the walkthrough. So that was number one issue. We need to ask for the keys. Kathy emailed or texted the agent said the keys will be dropped off later that night. Point is, this is all consuming time. And number two, the storage. Oh, number two, we didn't know the parking spaces. There are two assigned parking spaces. We didn't know the number. I'm running around in the middle of at night looking for them. The spots aren't marked well. We should have known very specifically what they were because that's part of it. So when either we could actually know that the parking space was there and nobody was in the spot. We didn't know the space. The agent said, well, it was in the P&S. It was, but what it did is we had to go back into the P&S. Kathy pulled it up. The point of this should be a checklist. We always have a checklist for walkthrough about the repair list, but we don't have a checklist for all of the things. And it happened, number two. So what else happened that we didn't know about? There's a storage container in the basement. Down the basement, just to find it. The markings, we finally found it. Guess what? It had a lock on it. And it wasn't a keyed lock, it was a code. We didn't have to have the code. I won't forget it. The code is PUCK, P-U-C-K. We found out, but we couldn't check the contents. We didn't know that it was empty. And if it wasn't empty, it had to be cleaned out. That was item 3. So we didn't get that night. And by the way, it turned out I had to go back in the morning to do another walkthrough myself before the closing, to get the keys, to make sure the keys were there, to check that the storage thing was empty and it could get in and so forth, and to verify the parking space. That consumed my time. That was, it turns out to be, it's 2 hours. When you think about getting to there, checking everything out, going to the attorney's office to drop off the keys, etc. That's a couple of hours. That's huge. Now, is that all? No, that wasn't all. One more thing. When we went in there, it was on the cold side. There was no heat.
Ooh.
Now it's a condo building. It's on the second floor, not a major deal, but there's no heat. First thing I do is text Kathy, no heat. Call the agent. The agent comes back is maybe the gas is shut off. And I texted back and said, the gas isn't off. This is not a gas furnace. This is a heat pump. It's electric. No problem. So that's it. What do you do? This is now in the evening. You can't get anybody in to fix this. And by the way, you cannot close, and you can't make adjustments at closing. So we would have had to delay the closing. We had it's a domino effect. And so what do we do? So Suzanne, what would you have done? Not Suzanne, I'm sorry. So Louise, what would you have done? You got it here. You call the agent. I mean, you could certainly tell them, come check it out. What? So the whole idea is, by the way, is to try to figure out, is this a major issue? Is there something wrong? Is it just the switches? What do you do? What do you do?
Jump. No heat. Yeah, I'd be horrified if there wasn't any heat, and there wasn't. I mean, if there was electricity and the heat pump wasn't working. So I'm not sure. I guess I would go back to the listing agent.
Yeah, we did. But here's the idea, is that, and this is where knowledge is important. A new agent, I have a clue, but over time, like me, I've experienced all this stuff before, and I know what a heat pump is. First thing I did is I looked and see what the temperature is, and I couldn't see any temperature. I looked at it had a display, digital display. I couldn't see the temperature.
Batteries.
I pushed it up, I pushed it down. I looked at it, and there was nothing. I said, there's a good chance that that maybe batteries are dead. Mm-hmm. I pulled off the cover, saw 3 AAA batteries. I don't carry triple. By the way, probably worthwhile at closing, Kathy, this is another thing, is to carry a tool. Always have a toolkit in your car. Toolkit, and always have some AA and AAA battery. Have the things that might be, because if I had 3 AAAs, I could have tested. I didn't. And Jenny said, and have a leaf blower in your car. I always carry a leaf blower. And by the way, in the winter, I'm always just, if you're going to blow it out, clean it up, carry a shovel, carry some ice melt. It's all those things a winter clothing. Anything can happen. And so that was it. I pulled it off. I saw the batteries. I pulled the batteries. I kind of cleaned them off, put them back in. It was dead as a doornail. I had pretty high probability that that's what it was. So we communicated it to the agent. She went in back that night, replaced the batteries, done. I came in, I didn't go back, came in the morning and did that and checked it out, and it was running. But think about the number of hours I spent, and Kathy spent, and the listing agent spent, and the anxiety of the client to get this thing done. This is not necessary. It's really not necessary. It happens because because there's things that are missing in the process, or some things that are in the process that we didn't follow. So this is why I see this, the biggest benefit from this webinar this morning is just that, is that we have an opportunity, the Gill has an opportunity to make major improvements, because we're in the process of trying to streamline our checklist and to improve it. But this is it. This is the big one for me, and it'll be well worthwhile.
Bob, let me ask you, if something were wrong with the boiler or the heat pump,
Yeah.
what would you have done at that point?
Oh, if I really thought it was, it would be, and it's not mine. I would say to the seller's agent, call a plumber, emergency service. I would, if I was there, because I'm there, I would, and if it was a furnace or a boiler, I would go down. I would go down and I'd look at the boiler. I'd look at, if the oil company or any documentation, I would take a photo of any documentation that has anybody's name on it associated with potential repair. The oil company, a plumber, any past repairs, you get that, and I would send that off to them and say to them, need to get this thing working by closing. So the good news, and that can be done. Now, if the boiler was dead, that's a whole nother issue. But let's assume that there's always repair. So you get them in, you do the closing at 9, you wire the funds, it sits there, but you don't go to close it. You don't go to record until it's verified that the problem's resolved. Guess what? That's another trip.
Right.
By the buyer agent or someone out to the property. It is such a time sink. So the way I look at it is, I don't know, and I'm going to go through, we get 25 minutes, not to exhaust it, but just to give you, you're on it. It took the time, is what are the major areas? We're not going to go through the solutions, but where are the big ones? Just so that it becomes, and this is for all of us as well, just to know these are the big ones. But the reason why we have so many deals, so few deals that fall apart, that fall apart or don't close, I think it's because of our resourcefulness in addressing an issue in the moment. These are all examples. You ask me any question and I'll give you a possible solution. So that's what's really important about this. We can make, and I want to share it. This could be, I don't know anybody who teaches this course, or I don't know anybody who has put together, learnings about this. That's what I like to do, is to share it out, because this is one of the most important things you could do in a deal.
So, Bob, one of the things that I was thinking about is, what happens if the bank isn't communicating with you? So let's just say that because this did actually happen.
Okay.
So I couldn't get the person servicing the account to contact me, and I was getting frustrated.
When? At what point in time?
So this was to make sure that everything was on schedule.
At what point? How early in the process?
So it was, well, this was maybe the week of closing.
Okay, gotcha. And were you representing the buyer or the seller?
Buyer.
Okay. So, and so what did you do? They weren't communicating. What did you do?
I contacted my client and had them call.
Okay. Now, let's take this one. This is a good case. So think about the situation. And by the way, they called. Did you ever speak to did the agent address it? You never spoke to the lender?
I actually, the lender ended up emailing me.
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah,
think about this one here. How could you have avoided the situation? By the way, one of the things that's important is that the fact that the first time you try to reach out to your client's lender.
But that wasn't the first time.
The first time you connected, right?
Yes, I had spoken to him in the past.
Okay, he just wasn't, he or she wasn't responding, that's all, at that time. But
Right.
You were doing it. Is that, what you did was right. If they won't respond to you, you ask your client. However, the idea, Kathy, why don't you answer that? How do you avoid that from happening?
you, long before the mortgage commitment is due, you contact the lender and confirm that everything is on track. And make sure that you get a solid answer and regular updates, so that you're not at the 11th hour before the mortgage commitment is due, asking for an extension on the mortgage commitment or putting your buyer's funds at risk.
Yeah. So on this one here, Louise, think about what Kathy was saying as you deal it up front, but I'll give you kind of example. One is the whole idea is to set some expectations with whether it's the listing agent or whether you're representing the seller or the buyer, because you want to know as a seller. I'll give you an example of this one here, is to set some expectations first about how you'll communicate and what they will do and how you will make sure that and making sure that you're doing your part, that you know that there's not an issue. Kathy, can you shut off your volume for a minute?
Sure.
And so what you do is that conversation, and you have that up front, and what you do is you make sure that you continue to have it. Now, maybe you were getting those and it was just a single conversation and you did just what for some reason, but I would be having, emails don't work. The best way to communicate these days is by text. Huh?
Right, I agree.
Yeah, okay. And so is to have an agreement. And so I'm going to give you an example of this. I got a call 2 nights ago. So we have a listing. Representing the seller. I received a call 2 nights ago from the loan officer for the buyer for 456 Center Street in Jamaica Plain, calling me. And he said, Bob, I realize, he said, I committed, and I had an agreement with him. He offered. He said, I will keep you up to speed. And he would call me. I would get a call or an email, a message every week, an update of the situation, because that's how he operated. What a great lender. He called me and he said, I'm calling you. Huh?
Who's the lender?
Kathy, who is the, it was guaranteed rate. I think that's it for 456. Guaranteed rate, and I forget his name at the moment, but he said, Bob, you're on my list. Last week was a holiday list, and I noticed I didn't get to you. So I thought I would just give you a call. We're all set for the mortgage commitment on Friday.
Nice.
So what I did was he called me, and I said to him, the best way to do, thank you for the update. Then he needed something. He was asking about the 6D. I said, the best way to get that is through Kathy. Kathy got this all covered. I said, shoot me I said, why don't I text you Kathy's contact information? Because what's interesting is maybe he didn't have it. And that was another thing. Kathy, he should have been, maybe you had it, but he was communicating with me, not Kathy. And that's much better. And so I forward the text off to Kathy and said, Kathy, here's a text that I got from the loan officer representing the buyer. So there's a lot of ways to do it. I call it my favorite word now, developing rapport, is to have a relationship where there's mutual respect and they will work with you.
That was actually the first time I had any issues with the lender, but.
Well, if once you're doing 50 deals a year, probably won't be a single one. Let's just take a minute here, and and this will go. You can download this, but let me just go through. And what I've done is just how I like to work organized. They said, let's start with you have an offer accepted. So for each stage, offer accepted. Here's some issues that show up. And if you want to chat about any one of them specifically, we can, but we won't go through all of the possible solutions. It's there. I went to offer, we went to inspection, we went to PNS, we went to mortgage commitment, we went to final walkthrough, we went to clear to close, final walkthrough, and at closing. And I've never had a deal after closing that got into trouble. I've had issues, but once it closes, it's not your problem. So here's the ones. And these are not new. By the way, there are 20 of them that we've identified. there are more, and we'll build it out. But you know, the first one is you run into issues on the offer when a home buyer doesn't understand the process. I mean, they want to put an offer in on it. You put an offer, but they don't understand all the terms. First time they ever saw it, you walk through it, but they don't remember it. So the whole idea is they really need to understand the whole process up front and actually have gone through, you know, a mock offer. Just a thought. Here's the big one: buyer remorse. Offer accepted, and they suddenly call you and said, "Bob, I don't want to go through with this." They give you all kinds of reasons. I didn't know I was getting into. You know, my father saw the place and he said no good. All kinds of reasons, but whatever it is, they want to withdraw it because, and the reason is because most likely something happened before this, and they finally figured it out. It came to them. We had one, by the way, that did fall apart on an offer accepted. We were able to get through it because they never realized how important location was. You know, what's important? It's the house, it's the size, all the amenities, but the location in the city or town. And they were pretty clear on location because they didn't work, you know, they wanted to work in this one community. But in the end, by the way, this would have never fallen apart. As we found out in the end, the reason it fell apart, they said it was location and it was right, but it's because when they saw the house at the open house, the father was there. The father made a comment. He didn't like it. He's not the decision maker formally, but guess what? He must have had an influence because it fell apart. And I knew this. I found this out after the fact because the client was a referral from another agent, and the agent was an aunt, and she shared it with me. She said, "Bob," I said, "Marie, what happened?" She said, "It probably I think it fell apart because of the father. He got involved." This was in Situate. This is, yeah. So the biggest thing on offers, I think the lesson is know what's going on early on. Just understand your buyer's needs and wants. Really take the time. If it's a rush offer, boy, I question my buyers. We put a deal under agreement in Wellesley last weekend, and I was surprised they went there. I asked them once, I asked them 5 times, "Are you sure this is really what you want?" What are you trying to talk them out of it? No, I want to make sure that it's there. They did it through home inspection. We're golden. Second is home inspection. The primary reason they don't understand the home inspection process. You know, home inspection, the buyers are overwhelmed by the number of issues in the report. If it's a seller, they're overwhelmed by the number of issues found. And here's a specific one that's pretty new, that radon shouldn't be a big deal. It can be mitigated, but recently, within the last year, we have had 2 deals that, and didn't even get under agreement, that the buyers were not interested in the property because of the potential of radon. One had a radon mitigation system. They just want nothing to do with radon. And these were both millennials. So it's something that's new. So that's why I wanted to raise it there. And the way you do it is to do a pre-inspection, do a radon test, have the seller do it. We did it over just last week. We're closing, we closed yesterday on 21 Oakwood in Newton, and great, went well, but we did a radon test before it went on the market. And when the buyer went in and did their home inspection, we shared it and said, "You can do a radon." They said, "No need to do a radon test. You got it. We'll take the results." All right. So that's a big one here. It's really, there are so many things that go on in inspection. It's all about education. P&S stage for me, is not that many. You know, it's the attorneys are difficult to work with. What you really need to know is who the attorneys are. You need to know what kind of relationship they have or don't have. um, there's dispute over terms. This isn't a big deal. If you've done a good offer, this is unlikely to happen. But we've had cases where the buyer didn't realize, because they never understood that they needed to have 5% down at the P&S. And they just didn't have liquid cash. They had it someplace, and that should have been covered the offer. And before that, when you went through it, say, just let you know, $1,000 deposit at an offer, P&S 5%, and you must have that money readily available. P&S is not a big one, to me anyways. Mortgage commitment. The two big ones, the buyer can't get financing, and the appraisal come in low. And the most important thing you can do, and it's what you talked about earlier, is to have conversations with the lender. If you're the buyer's agent, you want to be comfortable. You want to be comfortable that your buyer is rock solid. And the easiest way to figure that one out is to have your buyers, when they get their pre-approval, to ask for the maximum pre-approval the bank will loan them, to give them. And what that does is it tells you how much over the asking price they're qualified for. So just case in point, we've got the buyers that have a budget of 730, their approval is 810. There's no question when they have a 730, 740, 750 offer that they're well within it. You'd like to know that. Buyers say, gee, I don't want to share that with the seller. Yeah, you do want to share it. You want to let them know that you're strong. So that's one. And the second, if you're representing the seller, you go to the buyer's loan officer anyway and ask the same question. I know you can't share confidential information, but I want to know that they're rock solid. What can you tell me? They will tell you. Off the record, they will tell you what you need, and then you judge it. And I use that all the time. Again, I call it the bulletproof the transaction. I do that before the offer is accepted. I have a conversation with the loan officer of the buyer when I'm representing the seller to say that before I accept this thing offer, I want to know, because that's sometimes the difference between which offer you accept. Right. Mortgage commitment, it's pretty much that. And of course, on appraisal, you can put it into the terms. You can say that if you get these crazy over asking offers, I don't like to accept them, because it's a way for buyers to get things off the market and then come back and renegotiate. I just say that, okay, like to put in the offer is that we'll accept your offer, but the seller will guarantee, the seller, it's so subject to financing. The seller is okay. The seller will stand behind the property that it will appraise at the listing price, but any shortfall, your buyer picks it up. A lot of techniques for doing it. Clear to close. This is not the close. Clear to close. We actually had a time when we were ready to clear to close, and not till then, our buyer didn't have the money. Yeah, Renato Mariquin, Rosendale. Can't believe it. Can't believe it. And I learned from that one there. You need to know, when you have a seller and you're doing your net sheet with them right up front when you take the listing, you want to know what their net proceeds are, and you ask them what their payoff is. You can't guarantee, but this one clearly didn't have it. I have no idea how he thought he was going to do it. They lost their job. They've made a large purchase late in the game. The required paperwork that was due, they didn't get it done in time. These are all the lender's responsibilities, but the lender only has so much clout, and they can't force them. And who should have the closest relationship with the client? It's you. Mm-hmm. You as your agent, and you have to let them know the importance of it. That's how you address that one there.
I remember when you helped him.
Ginny helped him. Help who?
Helped with
Renato.
What is the term when they were going to forgive? Not forgive.
Forbearance.
Forbearance.
Yeah.
He thought that they totally forgave the mortgage.
Oh yeah.
He was moving to.
Yeah, he said, yeah. This guy was out of. I obviously didn't do my job, and we knew these people. We had done several deals with them. Final walkthrough stage. We don't need to visit this one again. Make sure the agreed upon repairs are there. The seller hasn't moved out. They haven't left the room clean. Sellers disclose, closing state, final walkthrough. We talked about this one here. Know what you're going into. Make sure that you're checking everything. Make sure that you're checking everything, or you know what you need to check before the walkthrough, and you ask the agent. You might go over there and do a pre-walkthrough on your own, because the walkthrough is the buyer's walkthrough, but you don't want to leave it to then. Just last Friday night was it. Just a quick side story. This is really funny. I got a call at 10 o'clock from that. So we closed everything. Wendy, it's Wendy Jang, Kathy. I got a call from Wendy. I got a text last night from Wendy. 10 o'clock. Bob, 10 o'clock, just quickly. I'm leaving early tomorrow morning. So, Bob, hi, Bob. Sorry to bother you. I'm leaving early tomorrow morning. However, just tried to use the washers and it couldn't work. The door lock light is not on. 10 o'clock at night. Then she sends me a picture of it. She is going to China for a month. She has to leave at 4 o'clock this morning, and her clothes were in the washer. I got on the phone. I tried to troubleshoot it with her.
Oh.
So she's Chinese, smart woman, but I thought the problem was the door was locked, but the light wasn't on, and she couldn't open the door. I tried to troubleshoot it remotely. I went into Google and I Googled it, portable washer dryer, door light, door locked. I did all the things, walked it through, nothing happened. I finally said, I'll be right there. 10 o'clock last night, hopped in the car, went over there. Bob, I'm so sorry. I said, Wendy, no problem. I walked over to and one of the things they say, shut off the power and turn it back on. It might reset it when the machine cools down. I walked over it and I pulled the door open, and the door opened. I looked at her and she didn't look at me strange. So it opened. I said, I thought this is the problem. No, she said, no. When I closed the door, the light was supposed to come on, locking it, and so the wash cycle would start. So I didn't even understand it. I didn't understand it. You know what this problem was?
It wasn't shut enough.
Huh?
It wasn't shut tightly enough.
No, it was shut tightly enough. It was, and I asked her, but she didn't understand it, is when you look at the knob to go to the cycle, you can cycle it, but to start, you got to pull.
Oh, pull it out.
Pull the knob to engage it. I asked her, she said, yeah. She was panicking it then. So it turns out her clothes weren't stuck in there. She couldn't. If I knew that she had to go with dirty clothes, I would have said, go with dirty clothes. I wasn't going to go over. I thought she had nothing. So, Bob being the
So your product support for washing machines now, I'll keep that in mind.
I mean, that's the role you play. And if I thought about it more, I would have said, let's do a FaceTime and let's just do it. I said, try to open the door. I could have done it remotely, but it was now 10 o'clock. I didn't want to go out. It was getting later. It was cold. Anyway, so that was it. So that's my story. So this all happened. So think about it. Now that was another hour, an hour and a half last night. Last closing stage. Biggest thing that happens at closing. Well, it happened. What we had, that's the new ones, no funds. But the other one is the seller. The seller attends the closing. They're so excited. They want to be there. The buyer asks the question. They answer the question. It's a disclosure issue. Like water in the basement. They never, or anything, you disclose something, there was a problem, that could do it. So the answer is never have a seller at the closing. They don't need to go. Stay home. So we've got just a few minutes here. And so what's your take? What do you do with this, Louise? So we just gave you a whole bunch of things. What would be used? What do you do? What do you do? What do you think of doing in order to, because you will run into these. The more deals you do, the more you'll see it.
Well, I appreciate the list because you have more experience than a lot of us. So you've hit some of these issues, and just to know how you've handled them gives us the ability to think ahead. I have a checklist, and that was given, way back with Kathy, for closing or before the closing. And that's actually what helped me, is to make sure that the smokes were done. If I go through my checklist ahead of time, it helps. I mean, there's some of these things you can't, some things are going to happen, but having this bulletproof list certainly helps.
Well, it's using the checklist, and in the checklist, there are certain items that are the things that are most problematic, just based on experience. And so you flag those. And if you're going to go through the checklist, I'd read it all, but if you're going to do it, it's kind of a quick hit or highlight it. These are the ones, do not forget these. So Kathy, that's what we're going to work on, is to make those changes there. And by the way, anytime you want, if you want an updated list of the checklist, anytime, it's available. Kathy can share with you. There's a buyer checklist, a closing checklist, there's a listing checklist. Checklists to me are important. Key is using them. So be glad to share that, but the next time around. So that's
I've added this slide deck to the chat in here, so you can download that before we close. Yep.
You do it, because once we close it off, you lose it, and if you lose it, just email Kathy, Suzanne. You can get it there. What surprised me just a little bit. I'm just going to say that there's no other participation here. Oh, Teresa, are you there?
Yep, Teresa and Kelly Fleming are also on.
I'm sorry. How come I don't see you guys?
I was a little late getting here, but I am here. Yes.
That's not a problem. Now I can see you there. Yes, thank you. And so sorry, I didn't include you in the conversation.
No, this was super helpful to me because I'm a newbie. So you scared the heck out of me.
That was the intention.
No,
that was my purpose, is to scare you.
You should be wearing a halo after going out at 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even imagine.
My wife, Jenny, when I said to her, she said, Bob, what the?
Yeah.
But this is, this.
Well, because you were exhausted.
This is my free time.
Freezing.
Oh, I know. It was my free time, and this certain thing. I think about these things. There's just things that make sense, and if I couldn't do it, I would have had a pass. But anyways, I learned from that one as well. Who else is on? Anybody?
There's a Kelly Fleming.
Okay.
Hi, sorry, my computer's a little delayed this morning. It's being very slow.
Hey, Kelly, just so I didn't acknowledge you there. Helpful, any comments, any observations that you have, anything that?
No problem. I'm Steve Zabowski's assistant, so I'm.
You can write a book on this.
I just joined as an agent as well, so I'm very new.
Oh, terrific. Yeah, no, this is be able to take this thing. This is, use it, add to it. What I want to try to do is see if we could go out to office and get some feedback from others. Here's a list of things we found. What are the big ones? And actually there'd be some real learning if this was available. You can't put 100% focus on everything. So the idea is to figure out what are the things that most likely going to go wrong, and make sure you don't miss those.
Right. I think the checklist and the breaking it out in the different stages is very helpful, just to try and prepare for anything that can arise. And obviously there will be certain things that will happen that you can't prepare for, but to just try and anticipate anything that can go wrong before it goes wrong.
Yeah, anticipate one, and if you can't, then just know how to do it. And that just comes with experience. The longer you do it, the more, the more you I just base it based on experience. That's all.
Right.
Okay. I'm gonna sign off. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very
My
good.
pleasure.
Take care, everybody. Good to see you all.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
Bye.